Next Gen fam, what is going on? Welcome, Momentum Audio. Where's everybody coming at from? Get in the comments, get live. Dylan, how you doing, my man?
I am so fired up. I can't even begin to tell you how pumped I am for this interview. But we want to hear from everybody who's tuning in live for this special edition of Momentum Audio. I'm fired up to be here.
Guys, we got some amazing stuff coming for you. I know you're in the comments. I got to shout out my grandma, Rose. She's on Long Island. There's some other folks on Long Island that I know are tuning in. Shout out to Lon. Shout out Kobe. I know you guys are watching him. Shout out Port Jeff. Everybody in Port Jeff going. Dylan, who you got? Who you got today?
Oh, I got to go with my man Darren, who's out in San Diego, and we got Chris tuning in. He's already throwing out the Shark Tank. Chris, we haven't introduced the guest yet. You got to save this.
Guys, we got to say a huge thank you to Allie, to Kristen, and to Mimi from Daniel's team. Oh my goodness, so amazing to work with. Huge thank you for making this all possible. Shout out Rachel and Jenna on our team for bringing this to life. Yo, this is going to be awesome.
We're going to have so much fun. And we want to thank you, Next Gen, for making all of this possible. So get in the comments, engage with us, ask your questions. We've got a plethora of community members who already want to hear from today's guest. So, Jay, should we tell them who we're welcoming to the stage?
Dylan, who we got, my man? I'm so fired up. I'm so fired up.
It's insane. This is, I'm going to blow your mind. He's a billionaire businessman. He's an investor, a social innovator, philanthropist, author, founder, executive. You heard that right. He's all the above. You've eaten this product probably like 100 bajillion times maybe, and you've likely seen him on TV as one of ABC's sharks on Shark Tank. He's built one of the food industry's most transformative businesses, Kind Snacks. He's the founder and now executive chairman. So I want to welcome right now to Momentum Audio, Daniel Lubetzky. Welcome to the stage, Daniel. How you doing, man?
I don't think I've done an interview this energetic in my lifetime. I'm so excited to be with you guys. This is the first time ever I'm interviewed that the minute you guys post this, I'm going to try to show it to my son because he's always like, dude, bro, you're a boomer. Like, if Justin and Dylan approve, go and listen, buddy.
Daniel, you just made our day. You made our year. I honestly can't even tell you. We're fired up to have you here. Where we want to start is we want to go all the way back. You're obviously an incredibly accomplished entrepreneur, but I want you to put us in the eyes of the great Houdini. Back in the day, you're doing magic at bar mitzvahs. You're doing the entrepreneurial thing. As a teenager, what was that start of your entrepreneurial journey like? You're not necessarily building billion-dollar business when you're 14, 15, 16. What were you up to?
It's a good question. I don't know where that came from. I've been asked that question before, and I don't know why I had this thirst to be an entrepreneur. Maybe it was connected to that I saw my dad being a self-made man. Maybe it was connected to fear. My dad had been a Holocaust survivor, and I was afraid of what happened to him, and I wanted to be self-sustaining. Maybe it was just fun. I mean, I love magic. I love learning magic from my dad. And one thing came to the other. First I put my parents through having to watch some performances, then my siblings. And after you survive your family in a magic show, then it's easier to do it to somebody else. And I think that's how it started.
I love that, Daniel. So many of us can relate to finding entrepreneurship, maybe not intentionally, but accidentally, because it's part of us. It's part of our DNA. But Daniel, you took more of what I would say the traditional path, going through school, right? You went to law school at Stanford. Talk to us about maybe when you first thought that, hey, this entrepreneurship thing, that could be a career, that could be my life, and not just a side hobby for fun.
In my case, I'm more of the former, trying to be the latter. Like since I was a kid, I was starting, little shows magic shows for schools and bar mitzvahs and weddings. And I was Houdini and my partner was Jaime, which makes no sense. My uncle said, like, look, there was the great Houdini. Why don't you be the Houdini? And my friend's like, okay, but I'm Jaime. I'll be Jaime, which doesn't, and it's stuck till today. They call him Jaime as a joke. But I used to sell watches in high school and in college and do a bunch of entrepreneurship ventures. My dad and my mom really wanted me to have an education, so I went to college, I went to law school, and I almost was trying to do what my parents wanted me to do, which is get a graduate degree because they had never got a chance to go to college. My dad only had a third grade education, so for them, I think it was very important. I was trying to follow the thing. I think they were very discomforted when I left law and I emptied my briefcase of legal books and filled it up with sun-dried tomato spreads and baguettes and went door by door letting people sample this sun-dried tomato spread made through cooperation between Arabs and Israelis, which is how I started my business, trying to use business to bring neighbors together in the Middle East.
Wow.
Daniel, there are so many who are joining us live who are going to say, we need to see some video footage of you back in the day on the Magic, but we're going to get to that maybe a little bit later.
You have that? I don't think you have that.
In the post-interview, we're going to get to that. But hearing you talk about your family, live, you're going to see it, Next Gen fam. Hearing you talk about your parents and the influence they've had on your entrepreneurial journey. Oh, we actually are going live. Oh my God, fam. Andrew and Dan.
Get out of here.
Next Gen fam. Colton is joining. Dan is joining. You are seeing this live. This is a first on Momentum Audio. Next Gen fam. I can't even begin to show you what's going on here. Daniel, you're talking about your parents. You're talking about their influence on your upbringing, and I know that has meant so much to you in your entrepreneurial journey. A lot of Next Gen entrepreneurs, they're talking to us and they're saying, I struggle with that feeling of my parents want me to go in this corporate route and I want to maybe have that entrepreneurial energy. Now you have a son and you're bringing him on Next Gen Momentum Audio very soon. We'll get to that also later. But how are you thinking about that? Our entrepreneurs, or Jean joining us, Franzi joining us, they're thinking about, look, you were an entrepreneur, you had that nature in you, Arabs and Israelis getting them together. You have this big vision and yet your parents want you to go that more traditional path. You said they were nervous. How did you progress, Daniel? How did you even take a next step and navigate that?
Well, my parents were actually very supportive of whatever I wanted. They did want to encourage me to get that education, but they were very supportive of never pushing me other than trying to give that education a chance. My wife and I talk about this topic a lot, and we will support our kids as long as they do something that they believe in. We want them to find their passion. I'm a big believer, and I've written a lot about how we need to have conversations with ourselves, and we don't do enough of that, right? Like particularly your generation and my kids' generations, and even us, we're so absorbed with our devices. We don't have 1 minute to think and reflect with ourselves. It used to be that when you were walking, you were just with yourself, talking with yourself, enjoying a conversation with your own inner self to understand yourself. Now, any minute that you're not with somebody else, you're on your device. And it's very dangerous because then you don't have time for self-reflection. So give yourselves time to remove the devices, take a walk without devices. It's going to feel weird, but do it. Just walk down without music, without devices, and just talk to yourself and start thinking about what's important to you, or lay down in bed, or take a shower, or swim, but something where you're not with any other device and with any other external stimulation other than yourself, and start asking yourself the really important questions about what do I enjoy, what gives me meaning, and then pursue that which gives you passion. Because if you're blessed enough to find something that you can be passionate about, and it's also okay if you haven't found it, right? It can take a while for you to start. But if you ask yourself the questions and see what you enjoy and what issues you care about, once you find a path that you really care about, success is guaranteed, because that journey of following what you care about is going to be so much more enjoyable than doing something else that you really don't believe in. Do you actually have a poster of Einstein behind you, or what is that?
We have some hilarious posters back there, Daniel. We got Einstein. I don't actually know if this quote, I don't think this is attributed to Einstein, but there's only one road to true human greatness, through the school of hard knocks. I don't actually think Einstein said that, but I like the quote. And hard knocks is something that your story so embodies of, you talk about using negativity, using obstacles as fuel to keep going. You haven't found your passion. Okay, use that as fuel to keep going, whatever it is. And our audience, clearly, Darren, Bianca, Ben, joining us now live, they're saying this is world-class, because everybody tells you if you haven't found your passion, something's wrong with you. But instead, Daniel, you're saying it's okay, but you can't stop looking. You better get your AirPods out of your ears.
The only thing that's really important, it's very important that you keep talking with yourself all throughout your journey, all throughout your life. You're your own best friend. The most important thing you can do is spend more time thinking and talking to yourself, and then take risks and be okay with making the mistakes, as long as you're thinking critically and trying to draw the lessons. I can connect my first venture after law school, Peaceworks, when I was going through it, I felt it was a success. But when you look back, it took me 10 years to break through 1 million and then back down. And it was bare survival. Sometimes I couldn't pay myself for a month, my own salary. And my salary was $2,000 a month. And sometimes I couldn't do that. And it was hard, but I felt it was a success because I enjoyed what I was doing. But for sure, I made so many mistakes during my Peaceworks years, but I learned from them. And a lot of kind success can be correlated to that. I wrote a book called Do the Kind Thing, where I trace a lot of the mistakes in Peaceworks and how they led to successes at Kind.
I love that, Daniel. And such an important piece that you clearly embody. We have to be kind to ourselves, right? We are our best friend, as you said. Give ourselves a break. I know that we are our own worst enemies, standing in the way of our success often and getting involved in stopping us from finding that purpose and that passion. And Daniel, something that you say, your purpose is to build bridges, right? And I think a lot of that from your story can trace back to your father and his experience at Dachau in the concentration camp when he was tossed a potato. So maybe you could talk about that story and how that was a bridge showing you that, heck, maybe this food thing, this idea of eating together can be my bridge that I go forward with.
What you're referring to, Dylan, is, let me try to move you a little bit so you're closer to the camera so I'm more centered. What you're referring to is, the Holocaust is one of the darkest periods in history. And yesterday was Holocaust Remembrance Day, and my cousins were forwarding me stuff that it's just really horrible what went through that period. But my dad not only found the strength to remind us about what he went through and retell his story and relieve all that pain, but he also made sure to remind us about a lot of moments of courage where people risked their lives to save his life and that of his father. He was liberated by American soldiers who risked their lives to come liberate people they had never met. And the episode you're referring to, Dylan, there was a German soldier that when people were not watching threw a potato by my dad's feet. And when my dad used to tell us that story, I think that what he was saying is it was not just very important that it was nourishment of calories that he got in his body, because he was so thin that he weighed less than my 12-year-old son weighs today. And he was by then like 16. He was like almost 6 feet tall and weighed like 70 pounds. But also just the fact that that man took a risk and looked at my dad's the body and said, there's a human inside there, and treated him as a human. And there's a quote that I had in my other office from Rabbi Hillel that says, in a place where there is no humanity, strive thou to be human. When there is no light, when things are going bad, when somebody's being downtrodden, being hurt, you stand up and you be the light to the world. You show that light. And I think that's in the day and age that we're all living through. There's so much polarization, so much lack of understanding, so much division. And you are inheriting a world that has huge challenges with climate change and with resource scarcity, with income inequality, and they're very serious problems. And you guys have to solve this. And our generation owes you the duty to do our part also. But ultimately, you are going to be the trustees for the next journey. And you need to find those things that fuel you and find them. And Dylan, you were talking about being forgiving of oneself. And my methodology with myself, I tend to be not as forgiving as I should be of myself. But with my team or with myself, if things are going bad, I think it's a time for you to give yourself some love and be so forgiving. But if you're not taking risks and things are all well and nothing is bad, it might mean that it's time for you to step up and take a little bit of a risk. So with my team, where everything is going great, then I tease them. I'm like, okay, what else can you achieve? And when things are going bad, I try to be supportive and say, as long as people are giving it their best, that's all we can expect from one another.
Daniel, thank you so much for sharing that story with us and sharing this advice. It's resonating with so many who are joining us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter who are tuning in. And really, just hearing you talk so authentically about it, it's refreshing because so many times you don't hear these stories. You hear the story of the successful entrepreneur. He's on the cover of the magazine, but you don't hear about the trials they face. You don't hear about the background, and you talking about how proud you are of your heritage. Mexican, Jewish, American, the ups, the downs. It allows us all to realize there's a human behind the entrepreneur. So I'd love to hear you talk about some of the struggle areas that you have as an entrepreneur, maybe earlier in your career. Obviously, you have a lot that went right. What are some of those, skills that you wanted to work on in your career, things that you weren't the best at, that you had to power through on?
Yeah, no, most of them were the wrong ones. No, I mean, I could spend, that book, Do the Kind Thing, is literally, the entire book is all the failures and how drawing the lessons from them then can actually help. But, one of them is lack of focus. That's probably the most common mistake that we make, where we spread ourselves too thin. With Pieceworks, I was so enamored with the concept of Pieceworks that I was starting ventures in the Middle East, in Indonesia, between Muslim, Christian, and Buddhist women in a cooperative, in Sri Lanka, between Sinhalese and Tamils, Middle East, Israelis, Palestinians, Israeli, Jewish, and Arab citizens, Egyptians, Turks, Jordanians, in Mexico, in Chiapas, in South Africa, and it was a tiny company, and I was spending more time traveling to set up ventures that I should have focused on just building my business and focus on the first venture. And I was trying to be in Bloomingdale's as well as in a convenience store. It made no sense. I was trying to be everywhere and be everything for everyone. And when you try to do that, you end up being nothing to no one. So you need to stay focused, choose a consumer that is your target and focus on that consumer, not trying to go for everyone, a channel that you're going to start with and dominate and win in that channel. And I don't know, have you guys ever played Risk?
Yeah.
So I use this analogy a lot because for me, it's really like the game of Risk, where if you spread your armies too thin, then somebody's going to hit you. And every morning and every afternoon, one person's waking up with a singular focus to beat you at that particular issue. So you need to win in that particular thing. If you're trying to do too many things and you have too many flanks, you're going to fall apart. So you need to stay focused. But also, when I did Pieceworks, I can keep going with lessons, but I'll give you one or two more till you fire me. But one of the other lessons is I was so obsessed with innovation that innovation and creativity seemed to be what I was doing this about rather than actually getting the products right. And sometimes you can out-innovate and expand too quickly and not focus on your other things. Also, I was so obsessed with growth that I wasn't obsessive about quality. The first products that I made in my first venture were really high quality. The sun-dried tomato spread made through cooperation between Arabs and Israelis was really, really delicious. And it really put me on the map, and people would like it because it was delicious. But then in my quest to grow, I started letting down my guard on quality, and I was launching really products that I'm embarrassed about, like this sweet and spicy teriyaki pepper spread. Like, why would Jews and Arabs be making sweet and spicy teriyaki pepper spread with this gelatinous blob? But I was just like, okay, if somebody doesn't like it, they won't buy that, but they'll buy the others. But that's not how it works. If you disappoint your consumer, they'll start buying everything from you. So you have to hold high standards. And then the last example that I'll give you of an early mistake I made was that I was so obsessed with the mission of Pieceworks, of bringing peace to business, that I spent a lot of my time talking about the social mission and not enough about the products. And the mission is important if it gives you meaning and it's great, but ultimately the product has to stand on its own, and the social mission shouldn't carry it through. The product should win because it's the best product, provides the best value proposition. And then the social mission should be an additional reason for you to believe and for your consumers to be loyal, but don't ask them to skip over a superior product because you have a mission. That will never happen.
I love that, Daniel. So many of the comments resonating here. Chris, Sam, Rachel, for us, for Justin, myself, and Next Gen Entrepreneurs, we want to dream big, and that's okay, right? But Daniel's saying, dream big, but focus on what you're here to do, what you're serving.
One tool for all of us entrepreneurs, Dylan, because it's easy to say that, but I coach some entrepreneurs that I've invested in through Shark Tank and otherwise, and it's very hard for us to follow the advice. So the best way to follow it, particularly because the greatest strength of an entrepreneur is that we get things done and we want to do. We're doers. but it can also be the greatest undoing if we're trying to do everything at the same time. So don't say, I'm not going to do it. Say, I'm not going to do it now. It's much easier to defer it. So if you have 50 ideas, say, okay, I'll get to all my 50 one day. But first, I'm going to start with numbers 1, 2, and 3. And I cannot go list them in priorities of what's the most important thing for your business. And then don't go to the next one until you've completed that other one. Like, really, if you want to one day dream that you're going to do this other thing, fine, but put it only once you've already solidified your leadership on the risk board in the countries and the continents that you really, really are winning in.
I love that. I love that, Daniel. And so much revolves around two words that you talk about, the ratio of wit to grit, right? And what you're saying with Peaceworks, you had all the grit in the world. You're going store to store, deli to deli. Justin and I, we like to joke, we'll run it through that wall to get the deal done, whatever it takes. But can I just open the door instead, right? And as entrepreneurs, we want to move so quickly. We see it. We want it now. Sometimes we have to slow down to get there more efficiently. So you brought up Shark Tank, Daniel. I'd love to hear for our audience, what are you looking for in those young entrepreneurs, those next-gen founders that you're investing in, you're mentoring? What stands out to you?
Above all, authenticity, people that are real and that really you can get that they are who they say they are and that they're just real people. And so if there's challenges, just share those challenges. Don't hide them. If there's failures, share those failures. It shows introspection. It shows self-reflection, which is perhaps the most important or one of the most important skills anybody can have. Because if you're making mistakes, but you're reflecting about them and learning from them, you're going to get it right eventually. So I think that's probably the most important, authenticity. I like a hard work ethic. I like the creativity that you mentioned. Is, the concept about wit and grit is a lot of us entrepreneurs it almost becomes, the challenge becomes the game, and we want to do it, and we feel that we're invincible by going through that wall. But like you said, Dylan, if there's a window open next door or a door that you can go through, why are you going to try to cram yourself through the wall? So don't just have the grit to work super hard, have the wit to be creative. You have to change the rules of the game. If you're competing against a company far, far bigger than you, and almost by definition, all of us are startups at one point here in the community we're talking to, you have to be more creative. You have to do it differently from the way people have done it before. So you have to think about how can you do something different. And you guys are really good at that, right? Your generation, because you're actually in a new world that you guys inherited. You're the digital native. So you need to figure out how can you use those tools to outcompete the big guys.
Daniel, I got to shout out Mir and Andrew, who are in our audience, talking about how they're so inspired that you're saying authenticity is the key, because that's the only thing we can really control, is being ourselves. And at the same time, then looking at the problem and saying, all right, I'm going to bring the hard work, but I'm going to figure out how I can do this intelligently. And I know with all the entrepreneurs that you're coaching and investing in and the businesses you're building, you talk about the and philosophy. And I want to talk and unpack this for our audience. At Kind, you have a very big philosophy that everybody knows, which is we don't say the word or. We don't have to choose it, but two, we say the word and. Can you unpack that for our audience? Where did that begin, and how did that really lead to Kind living this philosophy every single day?
It's an interesting question where it began, because I can reconstruct it after, but I don't know if I was born with it, or if while in college I studied both economics and international relations and merged it, and I'm not 100% sure how it happened. But when we're looking back, one of the things that we noticed is that, I had gotten bitten by the bug of social impact when I started Peaceworks. So when I wanted to launch Kind, I wanted to have a social impact. And, people used to tell me, you either have to be a business or change the world through nonprofits. And I'm like, why? Why can't you be a business that also cares about making your small contribution to make this a better world? And so that's where the and philosophy started being born. And then I realized that, wow, everything in the way I think is, and in the way entrepreneurs think, and is at the root of our creativity and innovation. What and means is that you look at the world and you question conventional wisdom and underlying assumptions. If somebody says you have to either make something that's healthy or something that's tasty, you're like, why is that the case? And then sometimes, by the way, there are valid reasons why you have to make choices that are, but many of these are false compromises rooted in quick shortcuts. And so by making something with nutritionally dense ingredients and premium and higher quality ingredients, you can make something that's both healthy and tasty. And you can make something that's wholesome and convenient. And so the and philosophy is about looking at the road less traveled and saying, can I do it differently from the way everything else has been done? And trying to say, what is the premise that's making people think that this is an or proposition? Can I creatively challenge that premise? And then that's how you create a ton of value.
I love that. Challenging conventional wisdom. Entrepreneurs, we're curious. We have questions that we're not going to necessarily take what she or he said for granted, right? We're going to go and figure it out on our own merit. And we might get knocked down along the path, but we're getting back up, right? We have the momentum to keep going. That's what we're here talking about today. And I also want to stay on the brand, Daniel, because Kind is such a powerful brand. Nice sidebar here. Back in 2017 at Next Gen Summit here in New York, we had Kind ambassadors come on board. I had Kind bars in my parents' garage for I think we still might have a few thousand. Y'all took care of us and we ate Kind every single day. But you built this brand people were fans of. They were superstars, right? They were your marketing machine. How did you possibly go about creating such a viral mission that, heck, this guy Dylan in New York, Justin in Long Island, we want to be your marketing, and you didn't pay us? What were you thinking about?
That's a long, complicated answer to your complex question, and a lot of mixed feelings, because if we gave you thousands of bars and you still have them in your garage, we gave you too much, and you should be buying them after we make you addicted. So, but the lesson to me came, from a mistake. I used to have a scarcity mentality, because you asked a lot of questions. I'm going to do one and then I can go to the brand if you want. But when I was growing Peaceworks, you can create different cultures in your company in terms of how you deal with money. There's a scarcity mentality, resourceful mentality, and a wasteful mentality. And the resourceful ones want to be scarcity means I don't have money, I'm not going to spend, I'm going to control. And that's okay, because you want to control costs, but then you're limiting yourselves. And so I was living in that scarcity mentality because that's all I had. I didn't have money. So I saw sampling as the cost center rather than as an investment. Once I had the money and my investor said, guys, have you looked at how for every person that tries Kind Bar, 9 out of 10 people not only start eating it on a regular basis, it pays for itself, but they start becoming your greatest evangelist. So we realized that we needed to sample the product. And it was, for many, many years, we did zero advertising, and we just sampled and gave a lot of free product, because then people become our ambassadors and try the product and share it and through word of mouth. But you also have to be careful of a wasteful mentality, which it sounds like we also went to a little bit, when if we were just giving up the product and not being mindful about how much we managed to get other people to try it, then you're not honoring and respecting money, and you can go out of business. So you have to find the right balance, to have a resourceful mindset where you say, what do I need to accomplish to maximize our objectives, but how do I do it at the lowest cost? Not, I can't do anything because I don't have money, or I'll do everything at any cost. It's, what do I need to do, and how can I get it done for the least amount of money?
Daniel, that's the and mentality right there that you're talking about. It's, I'm going to be resourceful. I'm going to figure out how I can make $1 of marketing reach me 10, but at the same time, and I'm going to make sure it's effective, efficient, and not wasteful, et cetera. So that and mentality is through your entire kind of history of the organization, and Kind is continued to grow and continue to scale. So talk about the brand. Let's stay on brand. As the company's gotten bigger, all of a sudden you have new investors, new partners, and new locations. How have you managed? I know you said in the beginning of your career, quality control was not something you were as focused on. How do you manage the brand, staying so authentic, so Daniel, even as it's gotten so big, so many more partners, so much distribution?
Yeah, one of the biggest lessons I drew from Peaceworks was the importance of being very consistent. There's a proverb or a precept that says, a brand is a promise, and a great brand is a promise well kept. And live by that. Like when you're designing your brand, create guardrails of what you are, what you stand for, and very importantly, perhaps most of all, what you are not, what you will never do or be, and stay true to that brand. Because all of us entrepreneurs get lured by this fad or buy fad or even a valid trend or another one. But if it doesn't fit your brand and you pursue it, you end up losing that authenticity of your brand. And the consumers, what a brand does is signal to consumers, this is what I stand for, and when you need that, come to me. But if you don't stand for anything because you're trying to be all over the place, and it just gets diluted. So you need to be, the kind promise is very clear. You can go to kindsnacks.com and look for the kind promise, or just enter on Google kind promise, and you'll read it and you'll find very specifically what we stand for in terms of our principles, in terms of how we make our products, that it's always leading with nutrient-dense ingredients, and it's always leading with ingredients you can see and pronounce. We give you the exact list of what we stand for. And if you look at across our universe of products, you will notice we're the only company at our scale that makes snacks where the leading ingredient in everything we make is nutrient dense. And it's not an accident. It was very purposeful. It costs more money to make products with almonds than with empty calories, but then it costs you at the hospital. So it's a very, very deliberate choice. And you have to be very, very true to your brand and very consistent and not deviate. And it's very much easier said than done.
And that goes right back, Daniel, to your core value of authenticity. We're going to tell you everything that goes in here because we believe in it. And entrepreneurs who are listening in, Daniel's taking the long game approach. Right? He and his team at Kind, they're not going for the cheap, quick sale. They want customers that will come back and, as you said, avoid the hospital bills because they're choosing healthy. Right? But Daniel, we all know as founders that the brand of a company really starts with the brand of the founder himself or herself. So I want to dig into Daniel for a second. You mentioned going on walks, right? Getting time to clear your head, spend time with yourself. What are some of the habits?
I want to interrupt you 1 second, and then you can ask me, because what you said is very, very important. I've been fascinated. I've gotten to meet some major CEOs of some of the largest corporations and founders of some of the most amazing brands. It is incredible how the founder's personality and values get imbued into the culture of the company, and they're almost synonymous. And so you need to be very mindful as fellow founders and entrepreneurs that who you are and how you behave and how you lead will ultimately be what's reflected in your company. And very much, they almost are synonymous. Sorry, Dylan, keep going.
No, thank you, Daniel. And that is so true, especially from the founder, the early team. Justin and I say all the time, our first 10 team members, they're going to multiply times 10 to make the next 100 and so forth and so on. Are you guys
standing up? Is that how you do this?
Of course, Daniel. Come on.
Daniel, we'll run this back tomorrow and we'll get you standing. So we'll get you situated. But I want to dig into those habits because we need to know what's behind the man here, Daniel. What is it, maybe a routine, a skill set that you've developed that allows you to bring your best self every single day?
I wish I could give you really good advice on that because I have a lot of work to do myself. I have 4 amazing kids, but I don't think I have the right balance that I need to achieve. We're all living the pandemic and I'm working out of home. I love that I've gotten much closer to my kids, but my sleeping habits are terrible. I stay up, I put them all to bed, which is my favorite thing about my life. But then after I spend a little time with my wife and with my kids and they all go to bed, I'm up till 2 a.m. in the morning catching up with email. And then I'm exhausted. So I need your advice, Dylan, on how to manage better. But I do think that what I said earlier about taking time to reflect is very, very important. I do my best thinking when I'm taking a shower. I always try to solve a problem here or there when I'm just on my own, and whether when I go swimming or when I go running or when I have the time to just take a walk and tackle a problem. Sometimes I literally go and like, all right, which problem is bothering me? I'm going to tackle with this one. And then I'll go on the walk and think about that issue. And sometimes I don't. Sometimes I just go on the walk and let whatever comes to my mind, play with it and flirt with it, but purposefully. But it's very hard because most times I'm like just trying to catch up. I'll tell you what I'm doing that's the wrong thing that probably all of us are doing. I'm like, okay, I have 3 minutes left. Okay, let me catch up with my WhatsApp. Let me catch up with my Telegram. Let me catch up with my text. Let me catch up with my email. Let me catch up with it. You have so many things to check. Holy shit. How are you going to live your life like that? And I see what's happening to your generation, to my kids' generation. It's super dangerous if you're just on devices and the devices rule you. I'm like so ruled by my email. It's very dangerous because then you're just being responsive, rather than thinking, what do I need to focus on? You're just focusing on whatever people send your way. So you need to really try to just not use devices for a week or for a few hours and really consciously track that.
Daniel, we're super inspired that you're being so honest with us, because we have other CEOs on the show and they're telling us about, all these great habits, and you're saying, I got still work to do. I have work to do on getting rid of my devices, getting to bed more on time, and doing what I need to do. And thank you. This whole theme of the interview is, I think, authenticity for us, and we so appreciate it. As we look, we're almost at a time. I want to talk about that long game and things that you're working on. You're such a long game player from the very beginning. You said, I'm not in it for tomorrow, 1 week, I'm in it for a lifetime. Just in the past few years, we have Empatico, your family foundation, new investment, organizations. Give us a hint. What's coming from Daniel? What can we be expecting? What are you really excited about that you're working on outside of just continuing to grow the Kind brand?
Well, we're working on a very big project that's going to combine a lot of what I've done to try to heal our country, and using social entrepreneurship and values-based leadership and building of a movement and television and Shark Tank techniques to try to connect human beings and discover each other's humanity. Because we live in the most amazing country in the world. We have all these incredible gifts that we take for granted, and we don't realize that we have a lot more that we have in common than meets the eye. And we need to find a way to rediscover that and pledge ourselves to that, and then work around that to work together and discover how those differences can make us strong. And so we have something coming up that we'll announce at some point this year to try to build bridges within the United States.
Daniel, we're already getting out of the calendar. You tell us when the date is, and you're coming back here to share with the Next Gen family. One of our final questions before we let you go, Daniel, you are someone who not only has your pulse on the market of entrepreneurship, you are leading that market. So looking ahead, 2021 and beyond, what's an industry, a sphere of entrepreneurship that gets you fired up, that you think is about to explode?
Well, I'll answer it a little more generally, Dylan. There is the pre-COVID world that we all knew very well. There's the COVID world that we also have been living through. And God willing, there's a post-COVID world. Every one of those three is different. When COVID goes, we're not going back to the prior world. It will be different. The rules of the game have permanently changed. The virtual world is here to stay, but we're also right now imbalanced, right? We don't have enough human interaction. So the entrepreneurs and the enterprises that will win are the ones that will figure out what will that post-COVID world look like. 6 months, 12 months, 24 months from now. But it's going to take a while, even after we all get vaccinated and after we get a little bit more immunity, and hopefully, God willing, are able to bring society back to what we want it to be. You're not going to go back to work 5 times a week, and some people might not go back to the office at all. But what is the right balance? And in that new world, there's going to be so many opportunities and discoveries, because if you don't have offices anymore, how are you getting people together? Are there opportunities for you to build camaraderie through tools that entrepreneurs create for those companies? Or what is it that's going to enable society to function in that new world that's not pre-COVID or COVID, but the post-COVID world? And I think there's going to be enormous opportunities for disruption in that world.
Next Gen entrepreneurs, as you're going into that post-COVID world, let's remember to be authentic, to think about that end mentality and not just grit, but use some wit as well and effectively tackle it. Daniel, we're pumped to hear what you got rolling out this year. Keep us posted on how we can help. And thank you so much for joining us and the next generation of entrepreneurs today.
It's a pleasure.
Daniel, you are a true inspiration. We'll catch you again soon. And Next Gen family, thank you for tuning in. Oh my goodness.
Oh my God.
Guy is the best.
Actually, one of the most authentic guys we've definitely had in the show by far. We bring in, you guys know, Next Gen fam, we bring in the most amazing entrepreneurs to Momentum Audio. And Daniel's we're asking, all right, what are you doing right? He's like, no. Let me tell you what really went down back there. Let me tell you about the mistakes we made, the failures, how I still have to keep it up. And that is so much more inspiring for the next gen entrepreneurs, no doubt, because he really kept it real for us.
And he led with passion, right? He took the long game approach. It wasn't a race. He didn't have to be the billionaire tomorrow. He built his dream life, led with impact, and is making the world a better place every single day. And on Shark Tank. And on the phone, right? That's not an or. It's not one or the other. He's proving it every single day, and you can too. We want to thank you one more time for tuning in at this special edition live recording of Momentum Audio. We're fired up, and we hope this gives you a little bit of energy to keep going on your momentous journey.
Next Gen fam, we love you. John, everybody on Facebook, LinkedIn, thanks so much for joining us. Make sure to connect with Daniel. Let's watch him on Shark Tank. We're definitely bringing it back. Ali, Kristen, Mimi, thank you so much for setting this up. Next Gen fam, Dylan, Justin here. Wishing you guys all the best and to be continued.
Happy